Welcome, everyone. It's Angelo Robles to the Angelo Robles podcast. I'm also the founder and CEO at Family Office Association. Today's session, distributed communications and collaborative technology solutions for family offices. A bit of a mouthful. Featuring William, we'll call him Bill, Wyman, president of Family Office Services at Summitas, and Tania Neild, founder and CEO at Infograte. I've known both of them for a number of years. They're some of the leading figures on that subject. It's really excited to have them on at the same time. Really excited today about that. I am going to give a little deeper context than I normally have been doing. And I wanted to really nail it, so I did write it. So you're going to see my eyes look down. It doesn't mean I'm being disrespectful. How I have my camera set up relative to its height and my notes is something I have to work on. So I know that's not a great look visually. But here's some of the context to it. Data security and privacy have become more challenging as more disparate systems interconnect, disparate. At the same time, family growth means wealth is shared across generations, each with distinct views about money, society, and how to work together and keep in touch. To be both secure and open to connectivity is a very difficult task that requires rigorous design and testing of software, specifically portal software running with the security envelope of an operating platform hosted in a lockdown data center. All things we're going to get into. Aligning the right mix of human skills and expertise is always key. The portal software must provide them with ways to simplify and organize information for online access so that everyone from the family timelines and special posts to the most sensitive and private documents can be available anytime from anywhere on any web-enabled device. Now, I've been talking about this and the value of it for families becoming more institutional, having better communication for years. And the reality is, what did it take for it to start to really blow up and people see the importance? It took COVID-19. So we're going to talk about going back about 13 or 14 months and that impetus. I could tell you the most common refrain that I hear from significant C-level executives in family offices is, oh, I should have been doing this a long time ago. But it took the impetus of COVID and them realizing that many technology solutions have become more intuitive. You don't necessarily need to have a CTO background. And people that are a little older are actually adapting way better than they thought. So why don't I start initially with Tania, and I would like to get both your opinions on this. What are the biggest changes in secure communications in the family office community since the beginning of COVID? Let's call it February, March of 2020.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think I'll go first. I mean, the biggest one is one that you just touched on, which is the business engagement. I mean, previously, I would suggest, and I'm CTO for a number of single family offices, I would suggest like, hey, why don't we look at DocuSign, or why don't we look at, expense and billing solutions where the bill is scanned in and automatically gets parsed and fed into your general ledger. Or why don't we look at, Teams or chat or Zoom or these things. And it was very much driven by me pushing. And now it's completely flipped. It's being pulled. How do we do this? What's this OCR? How do I scan bills? How do I, have workflow? How do I manage my workload? What kind of software is out there for managing tasks and so forth? And so now we see so much more business engagement. I do think that people used to go, gosh, there's so much software to learn. I can't really learn it all. Change management, training. How am I going to teach everybody how to use all this stuff? And I've always said, it's not quite as hard as you think, but everybody goes, well, yeah, you've been in the business for 30 years. It's easy for you to learn. You're a programmer, right? And yes, that's true. But now software is much more approachable. And people have learned with COVID-19 that they can actually pick up stuff without having a formal training program. They can kind of get in, and stuff is much more intuitive than it used to be. And so I think, part of the business engagement, it was driven because they had to quickly not be able to be in their offices, and everybody had to quickly deal with the distributed nature of the office. But in doing that, I think they all learned that the training of some of these systems, these smaller tech, micro techs, right? I mean, yes, your general ledger is very complicated. It may take some training, or learning your portfolio accounting system may take some time. But these micro tech solutions of a task management system, a team system, a DocuSign system, et cetera, are insanely valuable and much easier to learn. So I think, the micro tech, the smaller platforms, people are now giving themselves the benefit of the doubt that they actually could learn it. And I think that's partly, why the family portal. I mean, yes, the family has always been distributed, but they figured they'd see their person or get sent the document. And now they're going, gosh, I can't just, drop off my bills to pay or whatever. And I do want to be able to get in and see what's going on. And so I think it's a great example of nobody ever thought the family cared or wanted to get in. That's what they were there for, right? Is the service and the interface and knowing what their families wanted to see at the time they saw it. But now that's kind of shifted. It's clearly shown that 70, 80-year-olds can get on, and yeah, they might just do their 3 things, but it's much more intuitive, much more friendly, much less intimidating. And part of that, did come with the advent of apps on the phone, but certainly COVID sped that way up to be much more driven by the family and by the business, where training is much less intimidating, and they're seeing value in these micro tech solutions.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're realizing, like you said, and I said earlier, it's not quite as, I mean, maybe the general ledger and some accounting things, I agree, that could get more complex. But they often had one person in the family office that was doing a lot of the things we're talking about. And then what happens with COVID? Suppose we have one family office in California, effectively kind of the office manager slash techie got COVID very early on and hasn't come back since then. And they held a lot of the keys to the kingdom. And that was very frustrating for this family office. They didn't have policy and procedures. They didn't have standard operating procedures, which I'm a big fan of some tasks that are not overly technical. Other people could step up. But if other people weren't trained or don't have a manual or something online in the cloud that they could follow, it becomes difficult. And they had to piece all of that together. Family offices should have been using Slack, getting more familiar with Teams, which is a great service, and even something basic like Trello on project management and tracking results for people that are diverse, meaning in diverse locations, are incredibly important and not complex at all. You just have to put yourself out there and start to do them. Bill, maybe from your perspective, the importance of keeping the dialogue open and transparency in many forms, a family portal or hub. I mean, this is like a no-brainer now, especially as we're seeing families be, again, dispersed in terms of their location and family offices too.
Right, absolutely. And over my career, I've physically met hundreds of family offices like you, Angelo and Tania. And you really learn a lot about what works, the dynamics and everything. And it's the last 15 months has just been incredible. What was in so many aspects is no longer. Many a meeting I've gone to, well, we don't need a portal because all our family members expect face-to-face meetings. Getting the family office professionals would take a flight to Des Moines, Boise, all these glamour places around the country, and had to meet these family members and go over their statements. Face-to-face meetings, no more. Rarely did you even have the concept of remote working for family office professionals. It was always come to the office because you knew a patriarch, a matriarch, a family member might stop in and you need to address the issues they have. There's also historically been a concern for accessing my personal information via devices, smartphone, tablets, laptops, which is really interesting because on certain social media aspects, they're willing to share all sorts of things, but it's the financial information that they want to keep very private and secure. And that's why they think of it as in paper. And then the fear of outsourcing. Many family offices just felt we have to control everything in-house. And the last year, 15 months or so has really broken down those walls. And that transparency comment you made, Angelo, is just of critical importance. There's so much that they need to get access to: statements, performance returns, tax returns, cash flow statements, estate plans. But we all know there's so much more going on with families, their family properties, the family planes. Many of them have family operating businesses. You're still dealing with governance, succession, education. Those day-to-day requirements haven't changed. It's the execution that has changed. It's the methodology that has changed. And there is ever increasing importance of keeping the dialogue open. Transparency is so critical important. Prior to 2020, it took many forms: manual copies, FedEx packages, US mail, email. And even email, people didn't realize potentially the risks that were involved with it, because how many wealthy people just use Gmail, which in my estimation is not really secure at all. But since there's been a greater urgency for information that is needed now, and I want to be kept current. In many forms, family offices have transitioned to, as you mentioned, a family hub or portal. Those that put in place the structure prior to 2020, they had an incredibly easier transition because they already had that structure in place. We have seen family portal usage has skyrocketed and become just a critical component, like a general ledger, like the performance, like that data aggregation, a critical component of the single family office service platforms. Benefits are many: anywhere, anytime access, immediate access, getting approvals to trust distributions or invoices that need to be paid, making sure I can easily find information. I might want information late at night, and I don't want to have to scour all the email statements I've gotten. So now I can just go to the family portal. Access to non-financial information is of critical importance. Who's staying at the family's lake house in June? Connectivity with the family, know what's going on, because we're not having necessarily those family reunions we used to on such a frequent basis. And there's that sense of togetherness. And I think it's important to not underestimate how this kind of enhancement to communication adds to the value of the family office itself. So they see, look at what they're doing to keep me informed and updated on family matters. It's certainly not been easy, but we believe, and I think the innovative family offices have seen, with the right insight, effort, and perseverance, you can successfully navigate the challenges of the past year and do so in a secure way, and do so in a way that makes it engaging, and that notion Tania had of intuitiveness, of making it easy to do it. It is possible to do that, and with the right effort, it can be done.
Yeah, I mean, there's been conversations for over a decade or more. I could go back to it about a virtual family office. And again, it kind of took COVID to kind of push that along. And a lot of family offices realizing there's way more efficiencies to being digital. You don't need to do everything internally. You could outsource to best in breed. Now, yeah, you can make the argument of a little bit more, less of internal controls, but there's ways that you could maximize that even from an outsourced perspective as well. Every family office, when you ask them, what's your communication with the family? And then you dig a little bit into it, they all think they're really good at it. And the reality is they're not. And family offices could be both quantitative, which they need to be good at and do a better job of to see the results in. But a lot of it is how the family feels. It's qualitative. Your importance of making a career in this industry, growing within it, having optionality, getting paid properly. A lot of that's going to do with your ability to communicate. And now in the new world order, so to speak, and a lot of you are from the executive side, it's not up to par relative to best practices of the best and the best. Our two guests today know hundreds of family offices. I know hundreds, if not more. And there are some that do rise to the top. And certainly what you're doing, Bill, in terms of having a portal and that level of communication and privacy, security, and vault, and things we'll get into, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. I think you have to have something like that, especially in today's world. Uh, I guess the question will switch back to Tania. How has the architecture of the family office technology changed to reflect the things that we're talking about so far?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, now SaaS-based applications that are cloud-based, so you mentioned Trello or WebEx or Zoom or Teams or DocuSign or Summitas, LastPass, a password vault. You end up with all, I mean, it's login password hell for people. They're going in and out of
It is torture.
left and right. And as a technologist, it's very difficult because all of these systems, I only have their APIs. So an API is basically their formal language that they say, this is what you can give to me, and this is what you can get from me, unless you choose to actually use my application. And so all of a sudden, integration of these tools, when they all have their own local little systems with their own set of security and their own set of APIs, has become quite complex. When I used to have it all in my little kingdom and I controlled all of the access and I controlled all of the information, I could actually, it was still hard, but I actually had the power to do the integration. Now with it all distributed, it's very difficult. And I think about these people logging in and out of the systems. If logging in and out of the system takes 1 minute, 30 seconds, but you have to remember what's the login, what's the URL, got to go in, got to go out, go in, go out, go in, go out. And then I'm sitting here talking about cybersecurity and how every one of your passwords has to be different. Then I say, oh, well, what about I need to lock someone out? Now I have to go, what applications did I give them? Did they have WebEx? Did they have Trello? Did they have Bloomberg? Did they have, the accounting system? Did they have Bill.com? Did they have DocuSign? It's crazy. And so you need to have kind of a serverless, centralized security. And so centralization, typically, most tech people will go, oh, well, that's a single point of failure. And when you have a single point of failure, that means there's a bottleneck or a choke point in there. But yet in security, you do need to have it centralized to have full control. And it's a much better user experience. So I think, our technology has shifted where we need to make it easier for the users who have all these logins and passwords to kind of be able to bop in and out of the different systems with kind of, what feels like to them as one login and password. Now, it may or may not be, but it's much more difficult in that cloud-based distributed model. And so I think, the DocuSign or the electronic signature is a great example. They're like, well, you can just email it to me, send me the private equity subscription document, I'll print it out, and then I'll take a picture of my signature on the key pages or scan it, and then I'll email it back to you. And then I'll take that piece of paper and throw it out. So just to be clear, I emailed a document that probably had your social security number in it to you. You printed it out, then you threw it in the trash, and then you email them back the signature, which is the most important piece. Like, how is that safe or secure? That's not. Right? I don't care if you've got great email, that's still not safe or secure. I don't care if you've two-factored. That process left many, many places. And so you look at what Summitas has in terms of document signature, or you look at Adobe, or you look at DocuSign, and now people go, God, I can't believe I used to do all those steps. I used to get the email printed, blah, 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 blah. Now, some people still feel like there's a sense of security there. It's not there. But being able to jump on a portal and sign a document, not have to send it around, or get an email that links you into the portal and you don't even realize you're getting into a portal, and you sign it and away you go. So much safer, so much more secure. And quite honestly, now you can sign a document in less than 30 seconds, where before it would probably take you 5 minutes, excluding the read time, which obviously is the same for both of them. So I feel like the serverless architecture technically has changed dramatically. And a lot of the former MSPs, people who manage your laptops and your servers, haven't all caught up to it. And they're like, oh, I didn't know you were using Slack or Trello or all these things. I know what to do with your email, but I don't know what to do with all of those different things. So I think there is a little bit of a different focus. But again, I think the learning and the education and the intuitive, and if you centralize that security and can reduce the number of logins for people, either through a password vault or through a single sign-on is possible in some cases and growing, you can help manage both the best of both worlds, so to speak.
Of course. And Bill, what would you add to that when it comes to security standards, SOC, GDPR, encryption, et cetera?
Of course. And just to tie in a couple of points that Tania made, which were obviously spot on, the notion of integration and ease of use. And there's a difference between ease of use for the, let's say, the single family office professional versus the end user, the family member themselves. And that's why we have found a lot of these integration tools, such as single sign-on. So if I have to get onto another site, I can still come to the family portal and just do the one login. The notion of secure FTP. So if you've got outside information that needs to get into the portal, into the digital vault, seamlessly, efficiently, with no manual intervention. And even we have seen, three types of family offices. There are those that just want their quarterly statements because they don't want, they consider themselves long-term investors. They don't want their family members calling on a day-to-day basis. Then there are those that want immediate access to information. They might use single sign-on to get access to, let's say, their real-time online information being recorded and reported by their data aggregator. And then there's a third aspect of pulling in key metrics, which is something that we've added for a financial dashboard to make it simple for the family office and how we want to convey information to the family member in a way that is matching the goals and the ideals of what we are as a family office, the long-term, the high level, or the real-time information, and a combination of all three. So it is listening to our clients. It's making sure you have the integration tools to make it as simple and easy as possible. We have one client that uses her iPhone. She does facial recognition. She sees the icon on the phone. She clicks that. She puts her username and password, and away she goes. So, making it simpler for people to use it, which then leads to increased usage. Prior to 2020, our clients accessing it 30 to 50% of the time. But since that, numbers have doubled, initially by necessity, but now by habit. It's just simple and easy to do. And getting used to new things is always a challenge. 2020 forced us to adopt to new ways of doing things. And I think change across our personal lives has also allowed us to easily change things in our professional work. I remember being on a call with one of our clients, and we were all lamenting the sadness of not being together with family at Thanksgiving. And this family client of ours said, well, we're going to set up a Zoom call all day. People can come on anytime they want to. And I thought, what a great idea. So on Thanksgiving, we set up a Zoom session. It was from 9 till 5, and friends, family members, people we wouldn't have even normally have seen, and we were happy to see. But they were here for 15, 20 minutes chatting. So, what has not changed, though, is the focus on whether the technology is secure. And that was your initial comment, Angelo. And how do you evaluate that security? There are the standards, there's the SOC, there's the GDPR, making sure you have encryption. But there's one aspect of making sure your system is secure. But the other aspect is, and this is where firms like Infograte and Tania come into play, is do you understand them? Do you have the internal expertise to evaluate the security on what is being conveyed? You would never make an investment without getting the right expertise. So to me, having the right expertise for technology discussions and decisions is critically important. So you may have to hire a security or technology consultant to understand those risks and find ways to mitigate those you find important. And it can be as simple as helping you adopt basic best practices, storing IDs and passwords in a secure spot. One thing that surprising how many people don't do, the automatic and updated virus checks and software updates on your phone. I would guess there are a number of people who still use Internet Explorer, which is not even supported by Microsoft. So these kind of things seem simple, but maybe a lot of people haven't realized it. And that ties into my last comment, and that's education. Why it matters is because a lot of people just don't know this because they haven't been exposed to it. And we all know the weakest link is the person that doesn't change his or her password, is careless about leaving sites open, uses non-secure networks. And it's important for them to be educated. And we have found, at least in the family office world, having them sign an attestation of understanding how things need to be done. Because I personally believe it's the responsibility of each person to take ownership of security protocols. And that message needs to be clear from the family office to their professionals, and ideally family office to the family members themselves.
Excellent. And Tania, what should we pay attention to now? What are new problems that all of this in some ways creates?
Yeah, well, I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but now you've got this fragmented situation where you have lots of different cloud-based applications, each with their own security and their own formal APIs. And so how do you tie it back so you have a centralized security framework? But then from a data perspective or from a workflow perspective, how do you tie this through? I'm doing a task. I'm in Asana or Trello, but I want to say this task is for a given family member or for a certain entity. Well, my list of entities changes. So how do I tag that in Trello when I don't want to have to keep a separate list in Trello or Asana of my list of entities and then go over to Summitas and keep that list and then go over to my, accounting system and keep that list.
Yeah.
Lists in 10 different places. And yeah, it may only change monthly, but then I every month have to make 10 changes. It's quite cumbersome. And so how do you create these workflows to keep things integrated on these key dimensions or attributes? How do you automate so that you're posting? The family member may see it all as kind of behind the scenes. They don't necessarily know all the ins and outs, but for the office, they certainly have a lot more of a trick on their hands. And then I think, vendor due diligence. How do you know someone is safe? You ask for a SOC report. Well, what the heck is a SOC report? And what does that mean to me? Bill was mentioning that. What are the HR policies? Can the person at that company get in and look at your information if they have the admin passwords and privileges? And so there's now a new level of due diligence that you used to say, well, it was all running here locally. Now, every single one of those applications, I look at a family office and the per application headcount is something I watch. If you look at a bank and you say, well, how many applications does each person at a bank use? It's actually smaller than the number of applications that someone in a single family office will use. A single family office person has to wear so many hats and get into so many applications. And that's tricky for many reasons, the data, the security, and so forth, the education. Obviously, that's gotten better, as I mentioned, with it being intuitive. But I think we have to think about the vendor due diligence. We have to think about that centralized security. We have to think about, now that we're all distributed, right? As Bill mentioned, right? All your endpoints. Well, everybody's getting in on their laptop from home. What did you do to their laptop? Is that their work laptop or is that their home laptop? Is their kid walking by and jumping on to look up something? Are they doing other things on their laptop? How is that controlled and updated? How is their Wi-Fi at home controlled? Do they know the difference of a firewall and a router at their house? Probably not. Most people don't know a switch versus a router versus a firewall. And they just had some tech come in and take care of it. Like, did they ask? Who has that password? Does that tech that walked out, that Verizon or Optimum guy, have their password to their system? Did they change it? I mean, of course, that's all painful and very, very frustrating, but part of our new reality.
Right.
And you need to have someone, some of it you have to understand. Some of it you just have to appreciate and find the right person to understand it.
And Bill, will the platform that we're kind of discussing solve, the issues today, and how about in the future?
Sure. Yes, and that's the key. You've got these platforms. You want to opt for the right platform that meets your issues, but you also want to go with the right partner that you have seen historically is innovating, is talking to its clients and saying, how can we improve things to make it better, not just today, but in 1 year and 2 years as things change. And that's a critical question to ask when you're evaluating platforms is, what is your roadmap for the future, and how did you get here today? Show me some of the investment you've made to make my lives easier. I've heard some really interesting things about the last year and how it has made people to think about things differently. And the last year has, I think, brought some, change in mindsets no one would have thought possible. One example is attracting global talent. I mentioned that many family offices require everybody to come in the office every day. Well, if you're in a remote environment and there's this really amazing professional, a trust attorney, an accountant that wants to live in Jackson Hole, well, we've learned in the last year, it doesn't matter if they're in Princeton or in Jackson Hole or in Connecticut, it doesn't matter. So now you're able to attract this global talent for your office that you may not have considered before because that person didn't want to leave Jackson Hole. Facilitating the transparency. And I also like to say as a New Yorker, better use of professional talent, because those 3 hours that you spend commuting, now that they're gone away, and I've even talked to family office professionals who said, I have never been so on time to meetings in the last year because I'm not scrambling with travel and getting to the hotel for this and that.
Exactly.
It has just really improved the use of professional talent and doing things that they could not have done in the past. And some of the new problems to me is process management. People have to think about it. It represents change, and you don't want to use technology to replicate your current process. You're looking for technology to make it more efficient. So that might mean different steps, but a lot of times people have these 6 steps that they've done for the last 15 years to deal with this particular issue. And that's what they want to replicate without realizing, well, maybe we can just do it in 2 steps and we don't have to worry about it. And that's something for people to really think through. That process, automating process changes does not mean replicating it. It means using technology to make it more efficient. Tania's, e-signature comment, you could do that whole process using e-signature with the fax and the download and the print, but why would you? And so you need to think about those in different ways. Another issue is technology. What that means is it's a use of family assets. It's an investment. So does it represent a sound use of family assets? And how can I answer that question? And I think a critical way is to translate it in terms that you can understand. One is practical. By using, let's say, a platform that has integrated e-signature, we can save $10,000 a year in overnight mail costs. That can resonate. Getting you the ability to get something processed in a day versus a week, that can help understand that this is a sound investment. And another challenge or an issue to help pay attention to is, how do I ensure adoption by the family? It's wonderful to have all this technology, but if they're not using it, then there's no benefit. So It is a process, and you must have discipline. You need to get away from the mindset of the family thinking they can just call the office to get this statement. There has to be a change in the process for them to say, well, yeah, I'll send you this right now, but let me walk you through how you can get it on your portal. Go to the digital vault, you can do a search, you can go to this folder, you can get the information you need. And over time, that interface that becomes more natural because it's intuitive and it's easy, it'll happen. But the family office has to realize it's not a day one event. It's going to take a number of days, weeks, months, and it has to be a process that you help educate the family members with. You sit them through and walk them through how to do this so that they, oh, that's not as hard as I thought it was. And then you can use some innovative things such as notifications, where there can be a link
For
right
sure.
in the notification that takes them right where they need to go. So simplify, 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 and take the time to educate them on how to use any new technologies. And like Tania mentioned, once they realize that, they're going to say, hey, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, that was great advice, Bill. I'm going to harp a little bit on one of them that you kind of led with that question. I completely agree. I've been talking about it in my master classes. And now for the family office, the world is kind of their oyster. They could get talent from anywhere in the world. It might even be more cost effective because you don't need to have them to come into a set location. They might even be happier, assuming they have discipline and self-motivation, and they just simply may be better. Especially if you're looking to maybe be more global and have operations around the world. This really is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity to leverage relatively pretty basic to early mid-level technology and still truly have a really legit and higher quality than ever before virtual family office. But I want to talk about the flip of that as well. This is one of the things where it's better for the executive as well, for the reasons you noted. Strangely enough, this morning when I was working out, I was wearing my Wyoming t-shirt. So speaking of Jackson Hole, I love Wyoming. I love Jackson Hole. And you're correct. I see that mainly from California, people moving to Nevada, Wyoming, and they have a better quality of life. Now, the one thing that gets a little tricky is they probably need to be good because they're not going to have, they need talent, self-discipline, and they need to make the remote work because you're going to stand out more if you're not as good. And I don't care where you want to live. If you get pointed out by the family as this person's not up to par, then no matter where you are, that's not going to work. So people that have optionality are people that are talented and that prove it day in and day out. And they may be able in today's world to have the freedom of living in a family life that they didn't have even 13 or 14 months ago. But enough on that. We'll get on to Tania. How is content management different than the rest in terms of what we're talking about today?
Yeah, well, we used to all have files, right? You had a file and you stored it in a folder, and that was in a folder and a folder and folder. And now you have videos, and you have content, and content may be inclusive of a file, it may be inclusive of a video, but those things are really not so interesting anymore unless you can actually kind of search across them. And how do you search across them? You need the metadata, right? What legal entity was this for? Who signed it? When did they sign it? What's this video on? What software package are we learning about? What investment are we listening to? And so there's all this information that has to go around that specific document or video, and that's when it becomes content. And when you do put content around the actual document or video or picture, then you can start to really enable great workflows, great alerting, great personalization. All of these things become much more accessible because I'm just going, gosh, aren't the pictures great? But when you get face recognition and I can say, oh, I'd like all the pictures of my daughter. Well, that's a heck of a lot better than me running through 15 years worth of pictures trying to look for my daughter. And the same goes for the video, and the same goes for the document. When I say, oh, what are the birth dates on the trust documents? And I have to open up trust document by trust document and pick out the key date of when they were actually supposed to get the money. Well, that's kind of frustrating. No, you need to pull out that date and have it in an alert in a tickler system and then have it linked back to the source record. Mm-hmm. So you can get so many more efficiencies. And now there are systems that help facilitate that and take advantage of all that metadata. Again, the ways to take advantage of it are through personalization, through alerting, and search. The three big ways that the content now is so much better than when it's just actually the data. And you have those two combined. Now, creating that data, that content that goes around the document, the video, the picture, there are new techniques for that, right? So OCR, optical character recognition, is helpful if you have a bill or you have a check and it can scan it, or you have a K1 right? It can pick off all the different pieces that you need to file into your accounting system. You have a bill that you want to pay and you want to generate it through a workflow. Hey, this is over $10,000. We need the family member to sign off on this. No, this is less than, $500, and this is a recurring bill. We don't need to annoy the family member with this small bill. What are the different rules? Well, that's helpful when you took that bill and you pulled the information off of the bill so that that bill became content and you worked it through the workflow. Same with the pictures, same with the videos. And so I think there are techniques that have been put in place, whether it's the OCR or AI, right? So machine learning can try to figure out, well, I see a whole bunch of documents or a whole bunch of things in here. Those all look like passports to me, right? It can kind of try to figure out that there's a commonality among these, or these are all trust documents, or these are all statements. These all say First Republic. They all say Schwab. They all say Fidelity, what have you. And so there are now tools that help you get that content off of the image, the document, the video. And now there are all sorts of techniques to actually leverage that and put those two together. So I think that's a phenomenal new explosion. And people are going to look back and go, gosh, how did I ever just have a file? Right?
Yes.
It's so
Very well said.
Have a picture. Even when you take your picture on your phone, now it says where it was taken, when it was taken, right? Now it's going to start to say who the heck is in there. Now that picture becomes a lot more interesting. Well, I want those pictures from that Mexico trip. Heck of a lot easier to get than to be like, well, let's see. She was about 12 when we went on that Mexico trip. Back in,
We've all done that.
right?
Yep. No, that's true. I mean, things are changing. Much of it is positive and more intuitive than ever. And that's what makes it exciting for those of us that may not be the techies that you guys are. Bill, in terms of from your perspective, that question, how is content management different than the rest? And I'm assuming you're going to talk about permissioning and notifications, but give us a little bit from your perspective.
Right. So, Tania's talking about those key concepts. And to me, permissioning is a critical component, as in who can see what, who can do what. You want to make sure that if a family member is part of the foundation, that him or her have access to the foundation information, but nothing else. Let's say the family office is putting together a prenuptial agreement for somebody to review for an upcoming wedding. You want to make sure that only the mother and father get access to that so that they can review it before it's finalized or before they even decide whether they want to have a child have a prenuptial agreement. So permissioning is critically important. Who is going to see what and what can they do with it? Then there's the organizational structure of the information. We all know families have multiple entities. They have a family foundation. There's different branches of the family. There are family properties, there's the family plane, there's the investments. And all that has to be organized in a way with the permissioning, with the searching that Tania mentioned, to make sure I can even more efficiently get information related to it. And when you think about content, it's not just statements. It's not just reports. It is also, I'm a patriarch and I'm leaving my vacation house in Vail and I'm going to Jackson. And I want to make sure that the chef in Jackson doesn't serve me Brussels sprouts tonight for dinner because I had Brussels sprouts last night for dinner. So having this kind of a sharing environment of content that, let's say, the chef in Vail can share with the chef in Jackson in a secure spot, to know that we can compare and make sure that we are fulfilling our requirements to serve the patriarch in the way that he would like to get his meals. And then there are the notifications, email, which is common, but also making sure there is a facility for text notification, especially the younger generation are much more inclined to check and respond to text versus emails. My two daughters in their 30s.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer. I mean, I'm beginning to think when they become in more of a position of power, which is happening,
Yes.
I wonder, of course, I'm exaggerating, if emails are even going to exist in the future.
Exactly. So, you just want to make sure you evolve with them. Tania mentioned you need to have the applicability. And we have users from age 16 to our oldest client is 79. So you have to have that responsiveness, that you can have that wide range of adaptability and implementation of a platform that can be readily used by all. So content spans so many different concepts, and you need to be able to have the right platforms that can control it, organize it, and make it accessible when needed.
Excellent. I have a couple of closing questions. We'll go a little round robin. Before I do that, though, Bill, I do have to comment on one of your comments. I would say Brussels sprouts, even every day, would always be good, assuming it has bacon in it. So that's
Yes.
Then the chefs could do whatever they want. That makes everything taste much better.
Bacon is the magical cure for any food.
for sure. Tania, let's go a little crystal ball. Given your background as a technologist with the NSA, we didn't even have a chance to get into that. I've done other podcasts with Tania a little bit back in more older form where we do a little bit of a deeper dive on that, and we'll have her come back and talk more about my next question. But let's give them a little bit of a teaser. What's around the corner that's exciting and probably going to be somewhat intuitive? I'm assuming spurred by COVID and great entrepreneurs thinking of great companies. It may be something related to virtual reality, augmented reality. You mentioned a little bit before machine learning, AI. What do you think we could be looking at in the next 2 or 3 years from a positive perspective?
Oh, I think there's lots of exciting stuff going on, and I think that people won't even know it's going on for them, which is probably the best.
Yes.
When stuff is taken care for you and you don't even have to realize that it's there. I mean, machine learning and blockchain, for that matter, two great technologies. I mean, when I graduated, computer science wasn't a full department. I had to be a math comp sci major. And we were studying machine learning and AI back then. And I thought, oh, I'm never going to be able to take maternity leave because the world will be so different, in 3 months. How could I possibly do that? Well, unfortunately, I missed 4 rounds of maternity leave. And here I am, 25 plus years later. And finally, machine learning and AI are finally having their day in court. I could have taken all that time off and I never did. But it's here. Machine learning, AI, it'll be in your car, it'll be in your documents, it'll be in the scanning of all of that, material to make it come to life. It'll be in all of this security and so forth. So I think there's going to be a lot of behind the scenes technology that people will get to consume and not ever realize. It'll just feel more personal and safer.
And Bill, maybe a bit of a different question. If you wanted to comment on that, though, feel free to, but I want to be mindful of time. What key recommendations would help make or ensure the successful rollout of some of the things we're talking about, from whether it's your platform on Summitas or others? How do you ensure that that's more likely to be a successful endeavor?
Yeah, there are some risks that I have seen, or some some issues that have come in other implementations. And if you really want to have a successful rollout of a new tech platform, you need some core ideas to take to heart. One is making sure there is senior ownership of the project. If there is not a trickle down from the top all the way down saying, we need this, it's important. We're not going to succeed without it. It's not going to happen. Getting away from the perfect system discussion, you want to make sure that it can do everything that you need it to do. That's not necessarily what is required. You've got your core process flows that you need to concentrate on, solve those, and get the ones that maybe make it 80–90% more efficient. We all have outliers of tasks that need to be done. Technology is not necessarily there to solve 100% of everything's being done day one. So map out what's required day one and start working on that. One of mine is the fear of change, making sure you realize that everyone, that's why that top down is necessary, that everybody down realizing technology is coming in. That's going to make it easier for you. You can now do more value added aspects for the family and not worrying about having to email 100 statements every month and that's your job. We're trying to make things simpler for you. And then, truly understand the real cost. The real cost is not just what you pay for the technology vendor on what it costs to implement it. It's the people cost too. And hopefully you have a solution that is going to, let's say, initially require people to take that effort to implement it, but over time, they're going to see a much more efficient operations that is truly beneficial to them and as an individual. And that's part of the job of that senior management, as well as the technology platform, to help show how this is going to make your life easier.
And Tania, the old argument of buy versus build internal relative to, we're talking about substantial families, investors, family offices. What's your general thoughts?
Well, I'm a programmer, so, you have to take it with that. I actually prefer to buy. I think it's lower risk, faster, more cost effective, but integration. So it's very much a hybrid. They're low code solutions to help with that integration and so forth. So I do think it's going to require a little bit of each. And there's certain places where, a data warehouse or for reporting or so forth, where I can see tremendous value in actually doing some development, integration and reporting being the big two. But, I prefer to look to buy first and then back out and say, okay, where am I going to have to supplement this, with additional integration or development.
Excellent. And Bill, for those that would like to learn more about your organization, Summitas, and how they help family businesses, enterprises, family offices, especially in today's world, with communication, with document storage, and really much of the things that we spoke about today, how could they learn more about it and contact you?
Absolutely. They can just go to summitas.com, summitas.com. And my emails are very simple, bill@summitas.com. It would be a pleasure to provide any overview materials, continue our dialogue that we've had today, and share how our family clients truly benefit from solutions such as Summitas.
Excellent. And Tania, the same with you with Infograte. How could people learn more?
Well, my everything is a little bit more complicated. My first name, my last name, and my company name. So I made it as complex as possible. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, you can go to infograte.com, Infograte. It's information integration. Back in the 90s, that was popular to merge our names together. And you can always email me, tneild@infograte.com. Contact me through Bill, contact me through you. I will respond. So thank you for that. And thank you for having me and everybody for joining. I greatly appreciate this opportunity.
Well done,
Yeah.
Angelo. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'll give a little bit of a close. It really has been a pleasure. Again, I've known Bill and Tania for many years. They're really among the top of their professions at what they do. And this is such a timely topic. It's important all the time. And I've been talking about technology, communication, integration, but now that's been just so amplified and pushed along by COVID. And many of you have adapted very well, I would say. But there's definitely things that we could get better at, and that's going to make it more efficient, which is important. And even more important than efficiency is just make it better. Just make it more effective. So, I hate to harp upon, and I always mention Peter Drucker, but effective and efficient, that combo would be really good. So I do recommend learning more about Bill's organization, about Tania's. I think it would be absolutely invaluable for many of you. I highly encourage it, and really exciting. I know we've been very heavy on the investment front lately, so to mix in more from other perspectives is a lot of fun for me. And again, really at the heart of who we are, because it's way more, although investing is very important in a family office, but everything all around that, from philanthropy to family dynamics to accounting issues to global issues to technology to workflow, all those things are going to be very, very important. And even applies to those of you striving to have that family office in the future, which of course, you entrepreneurs and others, I know you're going to achieve at least on some level. So everyone, I'm Angelo Robles, the host of the Angelo Robles podcast and the founder and CEO at Family Office Association. Go to familyofficeassociation.com to learn more, including membership. We're very active on social media. Family Office Association on IG or Instagram, and Family Office or Family Office Channel, whatever, even I'm not sure anymore, on YouTube, but you'll find it. Thank you all. And again, thanks to our special guest today. Look forward to next time. Thank you.